Thanks everyone for joining today's Space Syntax Lab seminar. We are welcoming Dounia Laouar. She is an independent researcher based in France. Her research focuses on the analysis of urban network characteristics, spatial accessibility, and their connections with mobility, social inequality, crime, and urban sustainability. She's an expert in GIS and spatial analysis tools, such as space syntax, and assesses their effectiveness on socioeconomic data in Europe and North Africa specifically. Today, she will talk about, do urban renewal programs make suburbs safer? A case study on the Toulouse Urban Renewal Project. And before I hand over, if you have any questions during the talk, please put them in the chat so we can address them at the very end. And with this, I'd like to hand over to you, Dounia. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Cayman, for this nice introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. I'm very grateful to you all for taking the time to be here. I'm very pleased to present my work today entitled, Do Urban Renewal Programs Make Suburbs Safer? A case study of the Toulouse Urban Renewal Project. So first, this project was carried out at LRA at INSA School of Architecture of Toulouse and was funded by Atlas Short-Term Postdoctoral Mobility Program of the Arab Council of Social Sciences and the Foundation Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, FMSH. The program lasted for 3 months, and I finished the study at LRA after spending 5 months there. Thanks to Youssef Mokran and Professor Christopher Claramont, who co-authors the publication of this study in the Journal of Urban Design, edited by Taylor and Francis. I sincerely thank them for their valuable contribution and their patience. So I'm going to focus on 5 main points. First of all, I will talk about the research question and objective and the scope of the research. Second, we will look at the literature review related to the subject. Then we talk about the case study. After that, we will deal with the methodology. And finally, I will share the results and their interpretation and this discussion. My presentation will take almost 45 minutes, so let's get started. European cities have long experimented with urban renewal strategies to overcome urban decay and enhance quality and security issues. Large modernist housing estates are an example of such failures and have become the epicenter of concentrated poverty, crime, drug-related, and other social issues. They were and often still are regarded as problematic sink state in both design and social terms by politicians, the mass media, and academics. However, urban renewal is still a controversial and broadly discussed program criticized for its neoliberal nature, causing displacement and social cleansing. Other scholars argue that urban renewal demolitions and relocation initiatives seems to have a positive effect on reducing violent crime. There is ongoing academic and policy debate regarding the effectiveness of these programs in achieving their goals and of promoting social mix and spatial justice, as this may lead to new social spatial inequality and insecurity. French urban renewal programs were launched in 2003 with the official project goals of enhancing the housing condition of sensitive urban zones through dedensification and creating a safe and secure housing development by reducing the socio-spatial inequality between territories and reinforcing their attractiveness, combating social exclusion by promoting social mix and creating mixed income housing and openness to the city. Moreover, prevention remained a major issue linked to the city policy, as insecurity reduces the attractiveness of these neighborhoods. The urban renewal programs show the growing influence of security-related issues in urban renewal and city policy. This research evaluates the effectiveness of urban renewal program goals in enhancing urban security. The study was conducted during 2021-2022 in two urban priority neighborhoods undergoing these programs in Grand Mirail. The district is considered one of the most unsafe large housing estate in the city of Toulouse. We can observe here a clear increase in crime figures. Le Grand Mirail has been the subject of urban renewal program since 2015. Despite the program's efforts, crime rates in the area have continued to rise compared to the previous years, particularly drug trafficking, contradicting the data presented in the official police reports. The increase in crime rates question the effectiveness of those program initiatives in achieving security-related objectives and creating a safe environment. So from this arise several questions. Are urban renewal projects fulfilling their original, mainly safety-related objectives? What is the impact of this new spatial configuration on the perceived state of safety in this neighborhood? And are these problems linked to a specific spatial configuration or to a particular social configuration in this area? The aim of this research is to identify potential spatial and social configuration contributing to the issue and explore possible solutions through new development and architectural projects. I'd like to begin with the literature review relative to our subject. Let's start with the urban renewal. So urban renewal, also known as urban regeneration, is a place-based program used to overcome urban decay in city and which seeks to bring a lasting improvement in the economic, physical, social, and environmental condition of disadvantaged communities. The first initiative of urban renewal started in the late of 19th century in England. The earlier urban renewal appears in post-war II as a reaction to slum clearance programs. New modernist housing, including essentially social housing estate, was built to provide better housing conditions to the working class. Rapidly, these neighborhoods became the epicenter of concentrated poverty, crime, drugs, and other social issues. Thus, on the pretext of the new urban renewal programs, the large housing estate were gradually disappearing from the cityscape of many cities and were replaced with mixed income housing development. So regarding the French urban renewal programs, the French national housing policy of the 60s aimed to address the housing shortage by constructing large housing estates called les grands ensembles on city outskirts following modern urban planning principle. However, by 1973, this approach proved unsustainable due to changing immigration patterns, increased home loan accessibility, and government support for home ownership. Middle-class residents departed for individual houses, leaving behind vulnerable households, including low-income family, high unemployment rate, and immigrants. Issues in this state included poor living conditions, substandard construction, inadequate maintenance, and spatial problems like oversized pathway and high population densities, leading to safety concerns, such as crime and vandalism. Efforts to improve the social and economic condition in the late of 70s included job creation, social services, and security measures. In 2003, the government established the ONRU, Agence Nationale de Renouvellement Urbain, under Bourrouleau to address these issues, launching the PNRU, Programme National de la Rénovation Urbaine, to transform urban areas by reconstructing housing, diversifying tenure, and reducing stigmatization of subsidized housing. However, The PNRU failed to significantly improve economic condition or social integration, reinforcing social fragmentation and segregation. This approach often encouraged those with financial resources to move, undermining income level diversity and increasing physical and social disorders within communities. Now let's move on the next topic, which is the fear perception. People's behavior and mobility in cities are influenced by their perception of safety, which is strongly tied to the study of crime fear. Perception of crime studies can be first associated with the socio-demographic and population characteristics such as physical and psychological abilities and gender, age group, social and economic status, and ethnicity. The second perspective from an environmental design standpoint emphasizes the role of physical and social features of the urban environment in generating fear of crime. It is relevant to understand how urban planning and policies measures, including permeable and accessible street configurations, mixed-use development, and specific densities can effectively reduce both the incidence of crime and the fear of crime in urban areas. The impact of the permeability on security and crime prevention has been largely discussed through the encounter model and enclosure models. The encounter model, supported by the New Urbanism and Jane Jacobs standpoint, emphasizes that open, accessible, and permeable neighborhoods encourage pedestrian movement, social interaction, and informal guardianship, and improve safety. The enclosure model, derived from the defensible space theory of Newman, argues that limited permeability and control access through privatization reduce crime opportunity, leading to the development of gated communities. Regarding the densities, there is a lack of consensus on whether high or low densities are consistently beneficial to the built environment. Higher densities can be revealed as a more socially relevant form, potentially meaning more surveillance, therefore lower crime rate and increased security. Others consider that low density can also be a characteristic of high quality built environment with fewer crime targets. However, higher density housing does not necessarily imply high population densities. Living in high density conditions, crowding is associated with various behavioral issues and increased crime rates than less densely populated suburban areas. Mixed-use development are widely recognized as preferable to strictly residential neighborhoods due to the availability of services, amenities, and increased pedestrian movement. This enhances safety and reduces crime. However, land use diversity can influence routine activities and potentially raise the risk of specific crime. Space syntax approaches suggest no direct association between crime and density or socioeconomic affluence. However, strong correlation exists between traditional street patterns and lower crime rates. Overall, the three objectives of urban renewal program, namely promoting permeability, mixed-use development, and low densities, are not always socially advantageous. So assessing neighborhood street safety is challenging due to a lack of fine-grained localized data, with most available data at the metropolitan scale. Localized safety data is rare and often confidential and gender-based and may underestimate the street crimes. Fear in public spaces research has been qualitative and non-spatial. Addressing this challenge is crucial for urban planners, sociologists, economists, and policymakers. GIS, along with the Internet of Things and the GPS and the crowdsourcing, offer new opportunities for data collection and citizen participation. GIS combined with geospatial technology helps to understand people interaction with the environment and perceptions through spatially explicit data analysis. Let's turn now to the space syntax studies. Space syntax has long focused on crime and fear of crime as urban phenomena. Space syntax analyzes the relationship between urban structure, functional patterns, behaviors, movement, and social interactions. An urban spatial layout is first represented and described as a system of linked geometrical elements. As you see in the slide, axial lines, convex element, and visual fields. The interconnectedness of spaces determines different configurational spatial properties like accessibility, permeability, and visibility. The urban form generates different types of movement, including natural movement to specific destination called to movement, and along the short routes called through movement. These movements are strongly correlated with syntactic variables such as respectively integration, which measures the topological relative accessibility, and betweenness centrality, which is the measure of likelihood of movement along the shortest paths. Connectivity measures the number of immediate connection of a space and indicates its importance in promoting relative accessibility in the system. It has been shown that area with higher syntactical accessibility attracts more pedestrians and vehicles. Illier suggests that spatial configuration that makes natural pedestrian movement difficult can impede natural surveillance and the perception of well-appropriated spaces. The way the street network and the distribution of movement density, distribution across the network affluence in the distribution of crime patterns, although space syntax is effective in the space syntax is really effective in measuring street network properties. It does not consider consider other aspects, other morphological aspects like the frontage and the built mass densities. So that's the background on the urban renewal and urban studies regarding the fear of crime. So let's take a look on the case of the study. The study was conducted in La Rainerie and Bellefontaine, two housing estates within the Grand Mirail district. The district is a part of urban renewal program and experiences ongoing issues of insecurity and fear of crime. The study area is located on the southwestern outskirts of Toulouse city with a total surface area of 183 hectares and 1,537 inhabitants. The area benefits from good accessibility within the city through arterial roads and subway stations. Both neighborhoods include approximately 515 housing units made up of high-rise building, bars, and tripods of collective social housing and the private condominiums, but also small collective and individual houses in the Bellefontaine neighborhoods, essentially. Both neighborhoods are among the very poor and the precarious district. Indeed, respectively, 13 and 15% of households lived below the threshold of poverty. The Grand Mirail project, initially designed by Candilis team in 1962 as a modernist new town, aimed to be largest priority urban zone in France, covering 800 hectares and accommodating 100,000 residents with a target of 75% of social housing. It sought to balance urban development in Toulouse left bank. However, the project faced procedural challenges and funding disruption. So only Bellefontaine neighborhood was completed by 1972. La Renerie lacked unity and showing visible segregation compared to Bellefontaine, which is more which we found more uniformity in the housing type. So Le Mirail, like many priority urban zone, experienced an exodus of middle-class residents to individual houses on the periphery, replaced by different social strata. Private housing declined, housing marginalized groups. By the 1980s, Mirail gained a negative reputation as a disadvantaged area. By 1990, it met most criteria defining the priority zones by urban policy, with the concentration of immigrant and low-income populations. It was designated a sensitive urban zone by 1996. Le Mirail has faced various challenges, including economic hardship and social issues such as population replacement, unemployment, the built environment decay, and crime and insecurity. Various investments were made to improve the living environment with the aim of attracting more diverse social groups than the current residents. Housing quality, green spaces, amenity, and increased accessibility due to the subway opening in 1993 were expected to overcome stigmatization. Since 2004, Le Grand Mirail has been through several renewal programs involving residentialization, demolition, public space redevelopment, and mixed housing initiatives. The urban renewal program aims to create accessible neighborhood with improved visibility and mobility, linking Bellefontaine to La Renerie and the Mirail University. By 2040, the plan aims for a deep mutation, including demolition, large estate, and constructing smaller, more attractive housing units with enhanced amenities. The next point is the methodology. So in the methodology of this research is grounded in GIS framework to integrate and visualize the different data collection and space syntax measures, including quantitative, morphological, and spatial analysis. The study is performed in 3 steps: data collection, selection of independent variables related to the perceived security, and exploratory and statistical analysis. According to the Urban Renewal Program, improving security in priority neighborhoods requires 3 case factors. First of all, improving street network accessibility and visibility. Secondly, reducing density. And finally, social mix. The study examined how these variables influence the classification of the space as safe or unsafe. The selected independent variables include spatial characteristic, morphological configurational variables from space syntax methodology, and density and social neighborhood properties. So the visual graph analysis, VGA, was applied to represent the urban form in modern and large housing estates. Streets have unclear boundaries compared to the historic neighborhoods. In open and less defined outdoor spaces, a more significant correlation is found between visual graph analysis and pedestrian movement than between the other syntax analysis technique. Therefore, our choice of this method. The VGA was implemented for the 2 relevant periods of 2007 and 2019, based on map support of the building and the existing obstacle on site. Integrated from the reference geographical dataset BDTopo 2 and the orthophoto plan for the 2 periods. Once the support is established, it was exported to the open source software DepthMap to perform VGA. The morphological configurational variables output from visual graph analysis included two categories of space syntax variables, namely the accessibility, which include two sorts of movement through global and local integration and connectivity for the two movement, and betweenness for the through movement. However, as depth map does not provide the measure of betweenness, the latter was calculated using the program R by importing the VGA connection from depth map with iGraph library. If you remember, this relates to what I was saying earlier when I have defined the variables of integration in the literature review section. The visibility defined what you can see through the three local measures of control, controllability, and clustering coefficient. So the visual control defined whether the space visible from a location in relation to others directly visible location is more than what they see or less, whereas the controllability measure denotes the ratio between the number of visible immediate neighbors and the sum of all locations visible from these immediate neighbors. The clustering coefficient gives the degree of visual concentration of a given location, how this cluster varies throughout the represented system, and how a pedestrian's space perception changes when distance from a given location. So the variable of density, for the density, there is 4 variables were included. We have the floor space index, FSI, compactness or coverage, GSI, and building height by the number of the floors and number of the dwelling, the ground area of building and number of the floor and the surface area floor are reported for the both neighborhood for the periods of 2007 and 2019. The data was collected from the National Topographic Database and Google Street Map. The cell grid raster size was defined at a granularity of 100 meter. So each grid must cover a part of the urban space as well as buildings. The socioeconomic data for both neighborhoods, the variable used are the specific number of social housing units and the poor household rates. A localized social and fiscal file has been used as gridded data, 200 meter, and associated to socioeconomic and demographic characteristics. Data on people perception of urban renewal program and security was collected through a face-to-face questionnaire and sketch maps. The survey targeted resident, former resident, member of this neighborhood's association, and shopkeepers and frequent user before and after the program. The initial sample size was 300 individuals with 100 responses analyzed due to the non-response or the partial responses. Many participants expressed their fear about sharing sensitive safety-related information. A base map of both neighborhood was provided for the two periods, 2007 and 2019, with instruction of color coding security perception. Residents were asked to draw polygons for areas with that they considered safe by green color or unsafe by red color. Residents' explanation of for feeling unsafe were also collected in the questionnaire. Only the sketch map for 2019 was usable and was retained for the analysis. The obtained sketch maps were digitalized and aggregated toward the grid. Each grid cell was assigned values based on the number of occurrences of safe or unsafe location. The grid data obtained was used as the dependent variable in relation to the other independent variables for the same period in 2019. So the statistical analysis was performed on the R platform. The data were aggregated based on 100-meter grid, which aligns with the density grid. Different variables were calculated within each grid, including sum, mean, standard deviation, minimum and maximum values of the corresponding base units. Georeferenced data were aggregated with the result of the visual graph analysis. Correlation and regression coefficient R square were analyzed to examine the relationships between the perception of security and insecurity as dependent variables and other variables as independent one. This leads me directly to the next point, which is the finding. So the street interview aims to assess residents' perception of safety before and after urban renewal program. Results show that 42% of surveyed residents observed no improvement in security and felt even more insecure after urban renewal program. However, most interviewees expressed dissatisfaction regarding the lack of citizens' consultation during the urban renewal program process. The interviewees indicated that an important resident opposition to the program and condemned the housing and security authorities for being insensitive to their concerns. Regarding public space uses, 67% of interviewees frequented the public space rarely or briefly for the daily routine movement, and 53% did not go out at night due to the fear of violence. Moreover, 57% avoided parking their car in the neighborhood's car parks due to recurrent vandalism, theft, and vehicle fires. The survey findings show that nearly 60% of residents found their neighborhood worrying and highly hazardous, while 40% felt safe. Interestingly, although 60% of respondents have never experienced any form of violence after the urban renewal program, nearly half of them still consider their neighborhoods unsafe. This trend is also observed among 74% of participants who had never been victimized before the urban renewal program. However, 39% feeling safe in their neighborhood either. Regarding gender differences among the 59 women interviewed, 30% had experienced violence before the urban renewal program, increasing to 40% after the program. For the 41 men questioned, 90% were subject to violence before the urban renewal program against 39 after the program. As predicted, the interviewees reported a higher rate of violence after the urban renewal program, aligning with the recent police statistics. Drug trafficking was identified as the primary cause of violence, followed by the road traffic safety issues and increasingly common practice of rodeo. Vandalism, particularly targeting private properties such as fires in cellars, garbage cans, and parked cars were prevalent in these neighborhoods. Many indicators reinforce the earlier finding regarding insecurity. Public space uses indicators shed light on residents' perception on insecurity and its impact on their habit and behavior. Fear of violence weighs considerably on the dwellers' daily routine. The feeling of insecurity and fear among the inhabitants do not stem from their personal victimization experiences. Nevertheless, the research shows an increase in victimization rates after the program. Let's see the spatial configuration before and after the urban renewal program. The new development of the urban renewal program have shown significant improvement in accessibility and permeability of both neighborhoods. The values of shown in the figures at right The values of the mean and max values, the connectivity and visual global integration, local integration at registry are increased, which could potentially enhance the rate of the two movement in the neighborhoods. However, global betweenness appears to decrease after the urban renewal programs, which consequently may decrease the rate of the through movement in the neighborhoods. The urban renewal program primarily affects the global properties of the spatial configuration rather than the local ones. Regarding the visibility, the control values remain unchanged, but certain local visibility properties such as clustering coefficient and controllability exhibit lower values, denoting a trend toward openness in many neighborhoods. As we see in the figure at left, the integration core is highlighted by red orange, particularly evident after the urban renewal program. Visual accessibility has significantly enhanced in both neighborhoods through demolition, reduction of vegetation, and development of a new pedestrian path in the west of the neighborhood of Bellefontaine, as we see on the figure. So enhancing the pedestrian two movement in this area. The figure at right displays the area pointed out by respondent as safe or unsafe. Safe spaces are colored by green, and unsafe ones are in red. Safe and quiet area overlap individual housing, low-rise condominium location, near parks. In safe area overlap the high concentration of the social housing, as here, sheltering many low-income households. A neutral or moderately safe area tends to localize at the relatively lower poverty rate among their population. The predominant factor contributing to the fear and insecurity perception among residents is essentially drug trafficking. Indeed, observed location of drug dealing lookouts activity, here represented in the figure by blue dots, perfectly overlap the identified in safe spaces or area. The figure here present the different scatter plots and regression coefficient, revealing positive correlation for both the perception of security and insecurity. Moreover, only the sum of visual graph analysis variables shows significant correlation, which seems logical since cumulative values are more accurate for this kind of localized data. The VGA measures related to both local and global accessibility as the sum of global and local integration, and local visibility values as the sum of controllability, and clustering coefficient are strongly correlated with insecurity perception rather than security perception. Additionally, the values of the sum of connectivity and betweenness Rn and R reduced 3 exhibit moderate correlation with unsafe location, while showing a weak correlation with the safe areas, as observed in the figure. So on the other hand, the mean of the socioeconomic disadvantaged variables, including social housing units and the number of poor households, exclusively correlate with insecurity perceptions. However, the R-squared coefficient indicates average correlation at 0.42 and 0.33 respectively. The density variables, including the mean of both the floor space index, FSI, and the number of the dwelling, exhibit a positive and exclusive correlation with the insecurity perception. However, the regression coefficient of these variables are relatively moderate, We have 3,800 and 3,700. While building height and compactness, GSI, show a weak correlation. We have 0.28 and 0.24 respectively. This figure reveals two significant findings reinforcing the scatter plot results. Safest location, which is superior at 75% of the occurrence of safe spaces, exhibit lower accessibility and visibility values compared to the less secure area, displaying a decreasing trend in most spatial parameters. Conversely, perceived insecurity remains relatively steady. However, moderately insecure area between 25% and 50% have the highest value of the accessibility and visibility. Increasing rates of social housing, poor population, and building densities are associated with a sharp rise in insecurity level. Conversely, as the density of social housing and the density of building increase, the perception of security slightly decreases. This finding highlights the significant impact of spatial characteristics like accessibility and visibility on insecurity perception. Moreover, disadvantaged socioeconomic conditions, including social housing rates, poverty population, and building density also appear to impact residents' perception of insecurities. This leads us to the interesting part of the research, the discussion, and the role of the spatial and the social configuration on generating fear. So, contrary to the urban renewal program expectation, the properties intended to enhance security in priority neighborhoods are surprisingly crimogenic effects in this area. The analysis reveals a significant and paradoxical relationship between spatial configuration and both perception of insecurity and, to lesser extent, security. Permeable and visually accessible spaces can be considered safe, but they are also targeted by offenders as the best crime locations, aligning with the rational choice theory. The street network layout, particularly accessibility, permeability, and visibility, correlates with fear perception and indirectly linked to the drug dealing. Fearful areas overlap with the drug trafficking concentration and observe lookout. These specific locations are determined by spatial and the social configuration, indicating a non-random distribution depending on the spatial configuration and people movements. Insecurity levels are more sensitive to the local spatial configuration than the global one. Parameters such as visibility, control, and clustering coefficient, and local accessibility, integration at radius 3, local betweenness at radius 3, appear consistently related to insecurity, emphasizing the requirement of local urban space development to enhance security. The Urban Renewal Program aims to increase the spatial and the visual accessibility in certain neighborhoods, unintentionally benefiting offenders like drug dealers who seek profitable location with many potential drug buyers to enhance their markets. Offenders prioritize accessible and permeable location routinely frequented by non-residents, as well as more controlled and uncontrollable spaces locally, which allow them to control their potential customers and be controlled by the authorities. Drug market placement is influenced by rational decision-making and exhibits similarity to legitimate market retailers, prioritize accessible location to attract customers. Drug dealers may adopt a similar strategy, seeking profitable areas while prioritizing safety to avoid arrest. The study confirms that the street network configuration and land use distribution greatly affect drug occurrences. The study showed that permeability and proximity to long streets increase the likelihood of drug crime. Not only does the facility itself attract the crime, but the facility's specific configurational positioning on the street network also influence the likelihood of drug deals. New development like the Sati building, straight line, which we find here, straight lanes, it facilitates the drive-through deals and contribute to the emergence of the new form of delinquency, such as rodeo. The study finding suggests that the concentration of social housing and the low-income residents in densely populated areas has a secondary effect on insecurity perception and no impact on security feeling. The prevalence of social housing and vulnerable population also seems to influence residents' perception of insecurity due to the presence of the drug dealing in these areas. Drug dealers exploit disadvantaged areas to settle their traffic by hiring vulnerable families as drug minders and lookouts and ensuring their silence. In fact, according to the social landlords, complaints to police services are minimal in this neighborhood, as drug trafficking is commonly located in socially disorganized neighborhoods with the lack of the social resistance to its presence. High poverty reduces informal social control, increasing crime and violence. This perspective is rooted in the social disorganization theory of the Chicago School. Disorganized communities are less effective at exerting informal social control to maintain public order, leading to crime and delinquency. Drug dealing shapes the neighborhood social organization and reputation, leading to the residents' insecurity. Effective guardianship and informal social control in the neighborhoods are needed to discourage drug dealing. However, regarding these neighborhoods, fear of reprisals or indirect involvement of the population by the residents, it impeds the opposition to the drug markets, creating optimal condition for the crime. Rather than creating safe and livable neighborhoods defended by residents, fear of crime transformed them into vulnerable, defendable territories for drug dealers and offensive one for residents. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. So to conclude, this study proposes a structural approach to analyze urban changes over time, aiming to understand resident perception of renewal programs, especially regarding security. It merges qualitative assessment of residents' view with quantitative spatial analysis using space, syntax, and socioeconomic data. This framework experimentally evaluates the impact of the spatial configuration and urban enhancement on security perception and residents' behavior post-renewal. The study highlights the areas with high accessibility and visibility coupled with dense disadvantaged population are vulnerable to drug-related activities. Building density has a secondary impact on residents' sense of insecurity with no effect on security. Urban policy must address crime and fear of crime, prioritizing community involvement over physical development to prevent increased crime rates. Strategies like community policing, surveillance, and social programs for low-income residents can mitigate the adverse effect of urban renewal on crime. That's all I want to say about this study, and thank you for your attention.